Hello, my name is Mark. I'm an instructor here at Boise CodeWorks, and I wanted to take some time to go through what you should expect to get when you come to our campus and you're ready to go through the technical interview process. So we want to give you a bit of a study guide, as well as this video review on kind of what to expect. So I'm going to actually go through one of our actual exams, but you'll also, after this video, I would encourage you to, on your own, go through some of the study guide and practice this on your own as well. So I'm going to actually talk through and teach you through each of the parts that are important in here, though if you haven't already, you're certainly going to want to go through that initial environment setup, as well as the videos that talk you through how each of these parts work. They're definitely going to be more in depth, and they're in a little bit more of a learning style. But for right now, we're just going to kind of show off what our kind of goals and plans are here. So when you come in, you're going to sit down and we're going to go through a series of questions, as you see here. This is kind of just an example. These aren't the exact questions, but they'll kind of be within the same scope and realm. So here I have several different challenges broken down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they each kind of touch on different parts and aspects of maybe what you should have learned through some of that pre-course video. So with that said, let's dive into the first one here. So our first challenge is we want to write and style HTML. So our goal is to render our name in italics to the page in a paragraph. So amongst the files that you get when you will start out is an index.html. So I'm going to pull this over here so we can see it a little better. And so this is, again, my document. This is where I want to create my HTML necessary to put my name on the page and use italics. Now, it specifically does call out in the instructions that it wants to be in a paragraph. So what do we think a paragraph is specifically in? Well, the name is kind of implied there, as if you've gone through those videos, you know the paragraph tag is the P tag. P tag is simply what we can use for paragraphs. Okay, it's normal default font size, as opposed to alternatively, if it said, hey, we want to do a heading or something like that, you might use something like an H1 or an H2 or et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to start with our open close brackets of our P tag, and I'm going to put my name in here. We'll go ahead and save that. Now again, remember to save, otherwise you're not going to see your changes. So for me, on Windows, it's just a quick Control S. On Mac, of course, it's Command S. Please get used to that hotkey. You can still definitely come up here and go File and come all the way down to Save. That shows, of course, my hotkeys here, but just get familiar and comfortable with using those hotkeys. So if I save that, I already have my server running, which I did here in my command terminal. And I did the BCW serve. Again, if you have no idea what that is, go back through the pre-course environment setup, and it'll walk through how to get this working for you. All right, so that said, I put my name on there, and if I go to my document, I should see, go ahead and refresh, there's my name. But that's not the entire challenge that we were given. Our entire challenge includes that we need to make sure it's in italics. Well, there's a lot of different ways to do this. If I want to kind of take the easiest approach within CSS, it's adding another tag. So there's a tag that we use in CSS, and it's short for emphasis, or EM. I can tab complete for that, open up those brackets, and I can go ahead and move my name in between those. So I'm going to grab that, cut it, paste it there. Whoopsies. A little syntax problem there. Okay, and now I have the EM, or the emphasis tag, around my name. Now if I go back to my page and refresh, we'll see it's in italics. Sweet. So we got that first one all set and ready to go. Rendering our name in italics. Check. I'm actually going to come through and give myself a little bit of a success mark there. Done and done. That said, let's jump into the next one. Apply styles either through a class or style attribute. Well, class is the better way to do this, so that's the way I'm going to show you how to do it. But know that style attributes are always an option that you can style directly on the tag. It's just not advised. We'll talk about that in the class when you join us as to kind of the difference between the two. But for right now, I'm going to keep it simple. We're going to stick with class. We want to change the font to Arial. So I need to add a class to this element so that I can style off of it. Well, class is what we would call an element attribute. So I can click on here on the P tag and say, everything in between these two P tags, I'm going to add the class equals, and I can choose whatever word I want right here. This is what we'll call a banana word, meaning I could put the word banana and it can work just fine. Now, I'll also argue name things what they are. So in this case, I'm going to call it my style. One other thing I want to call out is my variable naming convention for classes uses what's called kebab case, or essentially where I separate my words with a dash, as if they've been skewered as some sort of kebab. All right, great. This only prepares my HTML to receive class styling. I need to actually jump over into my style CSS to do it. Now there are several different selectors. We have, if I just simply did P, and I did my curly braces, if I hover over the P, it actually shows me, this will actually select all P tags. Now, that's not specifically what I want. If I had other P tags on the page, I don't want them to have this same styling. So I don't want my P selector. This is an element selector. Alternatively, I could do an ID, which is a hashtag or pound, or, depends on how old you are, I guess there. But that said here, if I said my style here, and I hover over it, it'll say, okay, I'm going to find all elements with the ID my style. Well, I didn't give it an ID, I gave it a class. So this won't work for me in this case, but it is another selector you should know about. So last but not least, I put a period here, and I get, how about that, my style as a class selector. All right, now we're where we need to be. So I've selected the element with my style. The next part of that challenge, if we remember for ourselves, is we want to apply styles and change the font to Arial. Well, here's where I would encourage you to, if you haven't looked at it, definitely watch those videos, but sometimes you can get away with just kind of thinking about, well, if I were writing the language of CSS and I was making decisions, what would I probably start to call something that I wanted to change the font? Well, font comes to mind. And I start to see some things. So font, optional. You might be tempted to grab this one right away, but what we're actually looking for here is font family, and specifies a prioritized list of font family names or generic names. A user agent iterates through the list of the family names until it matches the available font that contains the glyph of the character to be rendered. Well, that sounds way more complicated than what it is, but font family is what you're looking for. So if I hit tab, I will highly, highly, highly encourage is when you get that IntelliSense, if you get the thing that you think you're looking for, tab. Tab will complete that line of code, and you see here it now starts to give me some options within font families default built into the browser. And I've already rolled way past it, but we were looking for Arial, and if I come here and I see Arial and I highlight over that, I'm just using my up and down arrow keys as I scroll through here. Of course, I can also use my mouse and the mouse wheel to scroll through. But if I find the one I'm looking for, I can click it, or if I'm on it with the arrow key, I can hit tab. And how do you know? There it goes, completes that for me. So I've set the font family to Arial. Let me come back over to my page. Oops. And we'll go ahead and refresh. And it'll be very barely able to see, but you should see a small change there. And now that's Arial. Sweet. So we got that next requirement done. We have our font family set to Arial. Next, we want to add a blue border with rounded edges. This one would require a little bit of knowledge to know how to do round edges, but starting out with border is maybe even just a word I can use right away. So let's say border. How about that? There's a border. So I'll set border, and it doesn't specify a width, so I'm just going to say 1 pixel, and we want it to be one thing you'd have to know about border is it does require another attribute, solid. You have solid, dashed, dotted, things like that. This is stuff that we do cover in the other videos. But I want one border, 1 pixel wide, solid, and we'll just say blue. So go ahead and save that. Jump back over to our code, refresh, and how about that? We got our blue border. All right, there was something else in there that about it being rounded. Well, if you looked when we were looking at some of the other border attributes, and again, watch the other videos to maybe look at this. If you jump down to this first one, radius actually is the thing that adjusts the corner or the outer border edge. So if I said border radius, and I wanted them perfectly round, it does operate on a series of percentages, all the way up to 50%. Everything over 50% is the same, but up to 50% is perfectly round. So if I come out here and I refresh again, we'll see how it makes like this crazy oval. That's usually a little bit too much. I'm kind of, my personal preference is closer down in the 5% range. So realistically, you don't see it much here, but if I zoom in, it does kind of soften that one. I don't think it looks great on borders, but it's definitely an attribute you can use to round out some edges. Okay, so we got that part all set for ourselves. And so we can jump back over here and say, great, we changed the font to Arial. We added a blue border with rounded edges. So excellent. We're all set to keep moving on. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a little X right there. Demonstrate an element selector. Well, I actually already did this a little bit earlier in the video. So do you remember how we did that? How did I say I want all P tags? If I said all P tags should be blue, how did I do that? Well, if we remember, back over here in our styles, we added the dot to make that a class. So if I instead said just, hey, give me all the P tags, and I want them to have a color, and we're already using blue, so let's just use like red. Okay. This element selector says all P tags. Without any other decorator, is what we'd call that, in front of the P, it automatically says all tags of this type. The decorator of the dot says classes, and again, the hashtag is IDs. So cool, we've shown off that, and we've shown off that. So at this point, section 1, good to go. Let's jump into section 2 in the next video.